Have you ever lain in the dark next to someone you love, trying to understand if it was destiny or just a well-established habit? Virgos do this, not because they doubt love, because they doubt themselves within it. There's a question you've never said aloud, but have repeated hundreds of times internally. What if I'm choosing this person only because it's comfortable and not because it's right? This question doesn't stem from weakness. It arises from an ancient, almost invisible mechanism that Virgo carries as part of its very breath. While other signs feel and move on, Virgo feels, pauses, examines, retreats, and re-examines. It's not indecision. It's an emotional security system so refined that it analyzes even its own feelings as evidence of an unresolved case. And that's exactly where the first illusion lies. You were taught to believe that true love shouldn't require so much analysis, that if it were right, you would simply know without this constant vigilance, without this need to scrutinize every gesture, every silence, every change in the tone of your loved one's voice. But what if it's the exact opposite? What if this vigilance isn't a sign that something is wrong, but proof that you're dealing with something too big to be treated carelessly? Think of an astronomer. He doesn't look at the sky expecting to see everything immediately. He points the lens, adjusts the focus, waits for the light of a star that has traveled for years to reach his eyes. He knows that what seems like silence in the sky is, in fact, a message in transit. Virgo does the same with the people she loves. She doesn't see the present. She sees the pattern. And patterns take time to reveal themselves. But there is a specific kind of pain in this. While Virgo waits for the light to arrive, she suffers alone with the possibility of being wrong. She reconstructs old conversations at 3 in the morning. She searches, in the subtext of a hurried "good night," for some sign that she's being loved in the right way, by the right person at the right time. And here's the first uncomfortable fact. This relentless search for confirmation isn't about the other person. It's about an old, almost forgotten wound of never having been chosen without having to deserve it. Have you ever stopped to realize that when someone treats you well without asking for anything in return, a part of you feels strange, almost suspicious, as if easy love were suspicious and only love that requires constant effort could be real? This is the secret architecture of Virgo. She learned at some point in her life that being loved required vigilance, that lowering her guard meant exposing herself to abandonment. And so, even in the presence of someone who truly loves her, a part of her remains on alert, waiting for the moment when everything will crumble. Notice how this appears in small, everyday gestures, in the way they ask, "Are you really okay?" 3 times in a row. In the way they revise a sentence they said 2 weeks ago, trying to understand if it sounded too little or too much. No one taught Virgo to do this. Life taught them. But there's one detail that changes everything, a detail that most people never stop to examine closely. What if the reason you can't stop thinking about this person isn't fear, but recognition? What if the body, the mind, the Virgo instinct already knew something that the rational mind is still trying to confirm with proof? There's a difference between doubting love because it's wrong and doubting it because it's bigger than anything you've ever been able to name before. And it's on that fine, almost invisible line that the story you're about to understand unfolds. It's about to reveal itself in a way you may never have considered before. What if the problem was never the person nor the love, but the lack of a map to recognize when something is, in fact, divine? It was while searching for answers to this that I found this digital book. The divine path that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose isn't about predicting the future of your relationship. It's about unlocking, within yourself, the ability to recognize real signs without drowning in endless analysis. For a mind trained from an early age to distrust its own intuition, it functions as a place where clarity has room to exist without being constantly questioned. It speaks directly to the part of Virgo that only rests when it understands the why and shows how to transform this inner demand into discernment, not self-sabotage. Right now, as you listen to this, a part of you is still processing what you just heard, silently recognizing patterns you'd rather not have noticed. This discomfort you feel now is no reason to delay. It's precisely a sign that something within you is ready to see more clearly, before doubt paralyzes you again, as it always has. The link is in the first pinned comment. But be aware, this content may be taken down. Click now and download your copy. Leave a comment below. Is there someone you analyze so much that you've forgotten how to simply feel? Perhaps you've already realized that this way of loving isn't a choice. It's a structure. From an early age, something taught you that trusting without checking was dangerous, that letting your guard down too soon meant exposing yourself to a disappointment you couldn't have foreseen. No one said it in words. Life showed it in small episodes that accumulated until they became a silent certainty. And it is this certainty, more than any characteristic of the sign, that shapes how Virgo builds, or hesitates to build, love. Imagine a cartographer facing a territory that no one has yet mapped. He doesn't draw the map all at once. He walks, gets lost, goes back, corrects the line, notes what he discovers on his body, not just in his head. Virgo does this with the people she loves. She doesn't trust ready-made maps made by other people about what love should look like. She insists on drawing her own territory inch by inch, even if it takes time, even if it seems slower than everyone else's around her. And this is where a silent pain resides. While others seem to move forward quickly, trusting blindly, Virgo feels behind. As if something is wrong with her for needing so much time to trust. But a map drawn in haste is a map that deceives. And she knows this, even without being able to explain why. But there's a trap in all this carefulness. At some point, the mapping becomes an excuse. The person keeps analyzing the territory until they forget to inhabit it. They spend so much time drawing the boundaries of the relationship that they forget to live within it. And then the question changes. It's no longer, is this real? It's, am I still present? Or am I just observing from the outside, afraid of making a mistake? Now think of a weaver. Each thread alone seems fragile, almost useless, but intertwined with others, in the right order, with the right tension, it forms a fabric that withstands weight, time, and use. Virgo sees relationships like this, not as a sudden encounter of soulmates, but as threads being intertwined, day after day, decision after decision. She is suspicious of loves that seem too big, too fast, because she knows that true fabric is built slowly. The problem arises when this wisdom turns into automatic distrust of anything that comes easily, when well-being within the relationship itself begins to be treated with suspicion, as if peace were synonymous with inattention. If it's good like this, what am I missing? This question, repeated for too long, transforms security into anxiety disguised as caution. And there is a third layer, deeper, more uncomfortable. Think of a tailor adjusting a fabric to another person's body, millimeter by millimeter, until the garment seems to have been born along with the wearer. Virgo does this within their own relationships. They adjust. They learn the other person's silences, schedules, little quirks, and they sew their own presence to fit exactly there, without gaps, without excess. But at some point in the story, this tailoring becomes erasure. She adjusts so much that she forgets to ask if that fabric is still hers. If the version she created to fit that love still has room to be, in fact, who she is, with her excesses and imperfections, without needing to cut away any part of herself to continue being loved. And it is precisely at this point that the most difficult question arises. Do they stay together because they recognize something true, or out of fear of discovering who they would become if they stopped trying so hard to conform? This doubt, however uncomfortable it may seem, is not a sign of weakness. It is the beginning of a necessary separation between two types of permanence: that which arises from scarcity, from the fear of not finding anything better, and that which arises from recognition, from an alignment that continues to make sense even after being examined exhaustively. The difference between the two is never in the discourse. It is in the body, in what remains after the noise of doubt finally subsides. Imagine a goldsmith standing before a piece of raw gold. He doesn't fear the fire. He knows that it is precisely the heat that separates the impurities from the precious metal, revealing the brilliance that was hidden beneath the dirt. Virgo treats important relationships this way. Even without realizing it, she subjects love to the fire, repeatedly testing, questioning, provoking small crises, just to see if what remains still shines. This explains why sometimes she herself creates friction where there was none. Not out of malice, out of an almost unconscious need to confirm that that gold is real, that it won't melt in the first real test of fire. The problem is that too much fire unnecessarily doesn't purify. It consumes, and she risks destroying with so much testing precisely what she was trying to protect. One question lingers after this: how many tests does someone need to pass before being considered, finally, good enough for you to stop testing? Perhaps the most honest answer is an uncomfortable one. No amount of proof is sufficient when fear, not reason, is holding the hammer. Because while reason tests to confirm, fear tests to postpone. To postpone the moment of truly trusting, of admitting that perhaps there is nothing left to fear there, besides the very habit of fearing. It was precisely this kind of exhaustion that led me to seek out the digital book, The Divine Path, that guides your zodiac sign to a life of purpose. It doesn't promise to erase Virgo's need for truth. That would be lying about its very nature. Instead, it teaches the difference between genuine discernment and wasted effort, between protecting what matters and habitually destroying what has proven more than once to be trustworthy. It talks about the right moment to stop testing the metal and simply recognize the brilliance that is already there, in front of you, without needing another fire to prove the obvious. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. Now imagine an archaeologist kneeling at an excavation site, patiently brushing the earth, layer by layer, never hastily digging anything up, because they know that a sudden movement could break exactly what they are trying to find. Virgo does archaeology within their own relationships. They excavate the other person's past, the old wounds, the repeated patterns, trying to understand where certain silences, certain disproportionate reactions, certain fears that don't make sense at first glance come from. And this, at first glance, seems like care. It is care, in fact, but there's a fine line between understanding someone deeply and getting stuck digging into another person's past as if that were enough to guarantee the future. Because no excavation, however careful, provides certainty about what will happen next. And that's where the troubling question lies. Are you trying to understand this person? Or are you trying to find in their past a guarantee that simply doesn't exist in any love, no matter how real it may be? Every archaeologist, at some point, needs to close the excavation and let the museum tell the story based on what has already been found. Continuing to dig after that reveals no more truth. It only reveals the fear of leaving the hole and facing, standing tall, the decision that can only be made in the present, never hidden between layers of the past. It was while dealing with this same endless excavation that the digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose, came to me. It doesn't teach you to stop understanding those you love. That goes against the nature of Virgo. It teaches you where the bottom of the excavation lies, the point where understanding has been enough, and what's left now is no longer analysis but decision. It's the courage to trust what has already been found, instead of continuing to dig in search of a certainty that life never fully offers to anyone. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey towards the clarity and genius you deserve. There is an ancient, almost forgotten craft called luthiery. A luthier doesn't build a violin by just looking at the wood. He listens. He taps lightly, puts his ear to it, adjusts millimeters until he finds the exact resonance, that point where the instrument stops sounding beautiful and starts sounding true. He knows there is a huge difference between a sound that pleases and a sound that vibrates in unison with the one who produces it. Virgos do this instinctively with people. They don't just look for someone who sounds pleasant. They seek resonance, that exact point where two different frequencies, played together, create something that neither could produce alone. That's why easy, beautiful, but shallow loves are never enough for them. They feel it in their body when that point of real vibration is missing. And perhaps that's what you felt from the beginning with this person. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just superficial compatibility. It was resonance, that rare, fine-tuned fit that most people spend their entire lives searching for without ever recognizing when they finally find it. The curious thing is that resonance is never noisy. It doesn't arrive screaming like fireworks. It arrives quietly, like that moment when the luthier stops adjusting because finally there's nothing dissonant left to correct. That's why Virgo almost always distrusts its own inner silence in the face of something good, thinking that too much peace is a sign of inattention, when in fact it may simply be the exact sound it was looking for all along. While I was trying to understand this feeling of resonance without confusing it with simple comfort, I found the digital book, The Divine Path That Guides Your Zodiac Sign to a Life of Purpose. It doesn't talk about luck or coincidence. It talks about the kind of fine-tuning that only those who have listened too much and trusted too little can recognize when it finally happens. It helps Virgo to clearly identify the difference between a sound that only pleases the outside and a sound that truly resonates within, aligned with the purpose you carry, even if you don't always know how to name it. The link is in the first pinned comment. The last copies are running out. Click now and begin your journey toward the clarity and genius you deserve. In the end, perhaps the most honest image is that of a potter at the wheel. He doesn't force the clay to become something it isn't. He feels the clay's resistance, adjusts the pressure of his hands, lets the piece reveal its own form as it spins. There's a moment when he simply stops controlling every detail and trusts the movement that's already underway. Virgos spend their entire lives gripping the vice with both hands, afraid that if they loosen their grip, everything will crumble. But there comes a moment in every true relationship when demandingness must give way to trust. Not because analysis ceases to matter, but because it has already served its purpose. It has revealed enough for you to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that what lies before you needs no further proof. If God wanted to take you away from that person, you wouldn't feel that specific kind of peace after the storm. That calm that endures even after so much questioning. Perhaps the most divine sign isn't a lightning bolt in the sky, nor an instant certainty. Perhaps it's exactly that, having examined everything, having doubted everything, and yet remaining there, choosing to stay. Not out of habit, not out of fear of starting over, but because, after all the digging, all the trial by fire, all the searching for resonance, some ancient and wise part within you finally stopped questioning and began silently to trust. There's a specific beauty in this that only those who carry the Virgo nature can fully understand. Other signs might reach surrender more quickly, with their eyes closed, without demanding so many explanations of the path. Not Virgo. Virgo needs to examine each stone in the journey, feel the weight of each doubt, and only then, with eyes wide open, choose to stay. And that's precisely why, when Virgo decides to trust, that trust carries a different weight. It's not naivete. It's a certainty built, tested, proven, and yet chosen again, every day. Perhaps destiny was never about finding someone perfect enough to dispense with all that vigilance. Perhaps it was always about finding someone worth finally letting go of the guard. And if that's the person you're thinking about right now as you listen to this, perhaps the answer you've been searching for through so many nights of doubt was already there all along, just waiting for you to stop asking and finally start trusting what the silence after all the storm insists on telling you.